So if influencers are the new celebrities, who are the new influencers, right? This is the kind of question that has been plaguing Janvi and me, and we're trying to figure out what should be brands doing when influencers are being snapped up by bigger brands. What should the smaller brands be doing in order for them to make an impact in today's day and age when the message is being lost if an influencer is not making it? Celebrities are gone, influencers are in, and influencers are actually moving up the ladder. What do we do then?
So in the last few years, we've seen an average of 4.2% engagement rate for the influencer campaigns, which is a very big number as compared to the traditional channels when it comes to engagement. The influencer marketing industry is projected to give us an ROI of 8.4x on average for every dollar spent. And a quarter of marketers are already spending 40% of their marketing budget on influencer campaigns. So now this brings us to the trend. When big companies were going the celebrity route, the smaller companies took the influencer route because they were cheaper, they were easy to get, there were immediate conversions. But now, since even the bigger brands are going the influencer route, what do you think the smaller brands can do? The smaller brands and the SMEs who cannot afford the Kusha Kapilas of the world do when everybody is going the influencer route? Let's
Wow.
open the discussion on that.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering about should they just pack up their bags and leave? No. So it's an interesting time for us to consider smaller brands and also brands that have just started up, because a lot of them were dependent upon influencers, right?
Yeah.
For us to really understand what's happening, I think it's time for us to leave those tropes of influencers being more relatable, because the moment an influencer gets more and more famous, an influencer does not become relatable, and an influencer
Yeah.
becomes as aspirational as a celebrity. And I think the setting the context in which this whole fight for the influencer is happening is very critical for us to understand. So if I put up a ladder of an influencer being so nano, micro, macro, and then celeb, you are actually seeing them move towards a bigger brand of sorts, right? So an influencer probably, for him or her, it's a fantastic journey. They're going to get more money, they're going to get more legitimacy, they're going to get a longer career. But what does a D2C brand that's just started, or a B2B brand that wants an influencer to represent them on LinkedIn or Instagram or TikTok or wherever, do in such a case? Now, this becomes really important, Janavi, and one of the first things that we have to consider is perhaps what the persona of the person targeted is actually doing at this moment. I think it's time for us to step out of the influencer action and understand what the target persona is doing. What do you think?
Yeah, the target persona is important and the north star is important. Now, for example, when it comes to the traditional advertising, the end goal always used to be get more awareness, or mass marketing, TVCs, which were always rooted as get 1,000 crore people to know your product. Now with the D2C brands and B2B brands especially, the target has turned towards immediate conversions, especially when it comes to smaller brands or SMEs that are looking for day to day on growing their business. The target has converted into immediate conversions, and the immediate conversions cannot come from celebrities, it cannot come from mass people, it cannot come from influencers that relate to millions of people. It has to come from nano influencers or micro influencers, and that has come from studies also, where the nano influencers have a very high conversion rates. It's going as high as 25-30% for nano influencers, which is a huge number when it comes to celebrity endorsements or mega influencers,
I
right? So yeah.
No, I think there is a lot of answers that top management needs to be giving, because
Yeah.
what tends to happen with top management is that they tend to pick the safe and certain option,
Yeah.
which means that okay, would you rather put a substantial sum of money to a bunch of nano influencers because they're bringing great conversion rates, or would you still go for the safe and certain influencer who's going to give you more reach and the rest of it? So therefore, I thought that maybe if you look at it from one step behind and understand that North Stars maybe may not change totally, right? For these B2B or B2C brands, but maybe we need to do a bit of a deep dive on how the persona is changing. So if I look at persona, I think all of us are getting way more sophisticated in the way in which we are dealing with not just brand and companies, but also media and formats and influencers and people who are talking to us all the time. I think that unless and until we recognize that the customer herself is getting more sophisticated and therefore understanding, okay, I'm being sold to right now, or I'm not being sold to, we will be missing the point. Because then what we will be doing is that we will be saying, okay, who are the influencers I can afford and let me get influencers. Maybe that's not the way to go.
everybody who makes any kind of purchase decision generally does it with some air of aspiration in them, right? This is why celebrity endorsements grew. This is why influencer marketing grew. Relatability was one factor, but then there was an aspiration that you looked up to. Now, nano influencers and micro influencers are not able to, manage that kind of aspiration or bring that kind of aspiration in people. If you're going to make a reel that, stars a mega influencer of 4 or 10 million followers as compared to somebody who has 1,000 followers maybe, right? You are definitely going to get more conversions, but you are not going to create that aspiration kind of a feel. So I think some here a brand archetype also makes a very big difference. Like you said, persona, right? It's also the brand's persona, what they want to create, the feeling that they want to create in the audience. Is it an aspirational feeling? Is it an everyday kind of a feeling? And that somewhere leads to what your influencer strategy should really be like. What do you think?
My feeling is that if you've really opened up a can of worms here with such a multi-layered question, so I would like to take it one step at a time. If I look at personas themselves, right, people whom you're targeting or whatever, I think that there is a lot of problem with the metrics in which we are judging things. So, which means that if you're looking for discoverability and reach, perhaps you should try to, find a way in which you can get to your mega influencers or celebrities or whatever it may be. But when we are looking at nano influencers and when you're looking at micro influencers, it's not the right metric to be judging them by. So that is the first thing that I'd like to say. Maybe more engagement, maybe more conversions, maybe more loyalty are the things that you will get with nano influencers. Now, the second thing that you said was about relatability. And I've always thought that, I'd like to maybe take a sidestep here. Digital marketing by itself was being sold on an efficiency basis, if you remember, in the first few years of its. Now, the reason why it was being sold as an efficiency thing was because it was the most logical argument to be made. And then you realize over a period of time that it can get as costly as so called mainstream advertising or whatever. And the second thing is it's not perhaps as effective as well if it is treated like that, because then what you're trying to do is optimize for conversions and at the cost of actually building long term value from a brand perspective. So I think that choosing the wrong metric can go a very long way into destroying brands. So now, if I look at influencers, right, I think the wrong metric over here is relatability,
Mm.
because I think that influencers were never relatable. I think influencers always had an inspirational quotient to them. And let me explain how.
Yeah.
I think human beings in general are the ones who actually take up, let's say, momentary leadership, and they accept momentary leadership. So, like, if I want to come to Hyderabad or wherever you are right now, and if I say, okay, Janvi, I have no idea about where to get the best biryani in Hyderabad, can you lead me there? I would trust your leadership in that moment in order for me to have the best biryani. And maybe I could do the same for you in London. So this is what the essence of human beings as tribes and communities is, right? Because you're looking at momentary leadership from all of us to all of us. And that therefore it is not about relatability at all. It is about momentary leadership. And if I look at that metric from a momentary leadership perspective, and if I then kind of try to gauge how an influencer is going to actually make an impact, then suddenly I'll have a different set of metrics. Then I'll say, okay, who is the momentary leader over here for my brand in this part of my customer journey? Does that make sense to you?
That actually makes a lot of sense, because the word influencer in itself is somebody who can influence you, right?
Yeah,
Like, who can influence you? Somebody who has an expertise in something. If you come to B2B, it might be somebody who has a technical expertise. If it
yes,
comes if it comes to a mother care brand, the influencer should be a mother, somebody who's taking care of a child, right? So
absolutely.
yeah, so what is Selena Gomez doing over there?
So here's the thing. So when we say, oh, an influencer is a mother because she's relatable, no, no, no. An influencer is a mother to a would-be mother because she
Yeah,
has gained momentary leadership in that specific context. So the
right.
moment we start understanding this from this lens, I would say that this is when we start changing the game. Now, if I add on to whatever you're saying, and if I try to look at what is the kind of leadership that influencers give, that momentary leadership that we talked of, it can be of two or three kinds. The first one would be, you're a domain matter expert,
Mm.
right? So you're immediately you'll be trusted in that moment. Expert ka kaam, expert pe chhodna chahiye, and all of that stuff,
Yeah.
right? The second could be, you are a celebrity disguised as an influencer. So Will Smith having an Instagram page or something like that. And then you're just like somebody who's achieved success in some other field, like Virat Kohli or Will Smith. The third is your natural born storytellers who have the ability to convince you to do something which you would not have done in that case. I think these natural born storytellers are shape shifters, they're context shifters. To some extent, they can go between lifestyle and fashion and beauty, for example, or they can go from gymming to something around health and nutrition, and maybe even something around corporate life. So you have the ability to bunch together a set of categories, and ascribe influencers who have that ability to make an impact through their conversations that they have. I don't know what you think about it.
That makes sense on a very that really makes sense on a theoretical basis. Now comes this question that when everybody is posting on Instagram or on LinkedIn or any of these social platforms, be it influencers, be it brands, then somebody who needs an immediate conversion or needs the awareness, then who do they tap into? Because if it comes to the influencers or the nano influencers or basically anybody who's a subject matter expertise, first of all, it is difficult to gain the kind of eyeballs you need as a brand for conversions without going the performance marketing route, without having an influencer whose face value in itself becomes a scroll stopper. Right, I think that is the biggest entry barrier that brands face, and which is why they keep going the celebrity route or the mega influencer route even now after they've realized that the conversions aren't happening with this route. They need a scroll stopper. So if it is somebody that people beyond that 1000 follower circle or 10,000 follower circles do not know, how does the brand even get conversion without pumping a lot of money into performance marketing campaigns?
This is where we've been working on, right, Janvi? I mean, we've been thinking about actually getting in-house influencers, right? So in-house influencers means that there are some people who are working with you in your company who have the ability to actually create stories for you because they so totally believe in the brand that they're working on. They
Yeah.
so totally believe the company that they're working for, that they will get their families and friends interested in something like this. No, I'm not saying this is the only solution in town, but you have to be creative and understand that influence is actually very different from what we understand influencers to be giving. And influence can be actually got from friends and family. It can be got by your neighborhood teacher who may not be necessarily actually connected on Instagram or LinkedIn or anything of that sort. So this is where I think B2B brands have to figure out how do they actually communicate their stories to platforms which are not very conducive to them. And this is where the biggest challenge is.
Yes, platform matters a lot for these. And if you can find a niche kind of a platform or go creative in the kind of content that you're making, if the influencer's face isn't a scroll stopper for you and the content itself becomes a scroll stopper with the influencer perhaps exaggerating it or invigorating that content, then I think you've hit the sweet spot. And I think if the influencer's words or what they're trying to communicate becomes a stamp of approval for the customer, it can become a very good nudge rather than just an awareness factor for brands.
Absolutely. The moment I say that, okay, my consumer journey is only defined by digital and only defined by existing influencers, the way in which they are right now, it is going to play within a particular sandbox that, has been defined by conventional thinking and conventional marketing. But what if I say that, okay, I can get this person to speak at my Rotary Club, okay, and that's the brand that he or she can endorse at the Rotary Club, which is an offline platform of sorts, and can help in more conversions. I suspect that more brands need to go about trying to expand the horizon of what they consider a platform is. So you can have your Rotary Club of Pune West as a platform, or you can have something different as a platform, like maybe a TED talk, or maybe a speech given in a college, or something of that sort. And then suddenly you realize that even the speaker's corner in Hyde Park, wherein you stand on a soapbox and start yapping about, is actually an intrinsic part of a consumer journey. And that person who's trying to be heard at that point in time is an influencer. And I think it's about time that we encourage these sort of people to come into the fold.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. Now, let's take things into more of brands perspective. Now, let's take maybe we can take hypothetical brands like Zerodha and Grow. So maybe Zerodha is going the mega influencer route where they get somebody very trusted like a Rahul Dravid, who's and they launch a campaign with 8 ads on Hotstar or ads during the prime time television news channels or whatever. So one big mega influencer with a mega campaign, and the other side is Grow, who's using small influencers distributed over different maybe LinkedIn, it could be X, it could be Instagram, and then it could be WhatsApp pages, etc. So how would these campaigns shape up to be for Grow to get the kind of visibility that Zerodha would get from one ad using Rahul Dravid?
So I think that this is where the question of metrics comes in. So if I look at two aspects, right? Let's start with what your budget is. Okay, so if your budget is X and the other guy's is 10X, that guy can afford a Rahul Dravid while you can afford maybe a Ranji Trophy player. Okay, so but the metric over here, which Zerodha is trying to do with Rahul Dravid, is perhaps discoverability and expanding the category. Now that metric may not change for you. Your metric may still be, oh, I want to be discovered by more people. So therefore, you need somebody who can spread the word that goes beyond your existing customer base. So you need to find out who works in that budget. So you can't really say, oh, I'm now suddenly going to take many nano influencers and that's suddenly going to replace Rahul Dravid. No, because your budget is different. You have to look at the equivalent of a Rahul Dravid, but you still have to work on the same metrics. On the other hand, what you might want to consider, because you're a small business, is okay, does category expansion really hold any value for me as a business, or should I just be trying to get stuff from competition, or should I just be trying to get more business from my existing customers? Now, this is where the metrics change, and then your nano influencers and stuff like that can come in. So the thinking, Janavi, what perhaps I'm alluding to is that the thinking should not be restricted to influencers. The thinking should be saying, okay, what am I trying to achieve from a marketing objective? What am I trying to achieve from a storytelling objective? What am I trying to achieve from, the limited budget that I've got? Where is reality really, right? And I think that this reality check is going to help smaller brands.
Yeah, that's true. If I was Zerodha going for an IPO, then Rahul Dravid would make absolute sense for me, because I need to get the retail investors on board. I need to get the trust of institutional investors to know that, somebody like Rahul Dravid trusts my platform. But if I'm grow that requires more acquisitions right now. That's getting to the kind of stage that Zerodha was 5 years back. Then I need a lot of nano and micro influencers to seed in to get me the immediate conversions of people who are in my network. If I, as a nano influencer, know 1,000 people, if out of that even 10% people convert to my platform, gross acquisition immediately increases. So you're absolutely right. The metric here is the number one priority, and that is what should set where my marketing what my marketing objective is. And then it comes to what route do I take? Do I go the animated route? Do I go the AI route? Do I go the influencer route? Or do I go the UGC route?
Yeah, no, I'd like to make it more concrete and real, because you have to understand that the same influencer can be used in different ways. Like, for example, I know that you have, let's say, 11K followers for yourself on LinkedIn. Now, if I'm a brand and I know that you stand for Indian made goods, let's go with that, Indian made goods, and I know it's a cause that you really believe in and stuff like that. So I'm an Indian made brand and I want somebody like you to spread the gospel. Okay. And I'm a new brand. So I will still be using you. You might not be having 100,000 followers or 200,000 followers on LinkedIn. I will still be using you for discoverability. Now, so that the metric I have to understand. Now, on the other hand, if I know that I'm a huge brand, okay, or I'm succeeding, and I need to get people to become more engaged with whatever my messaging is, I will use you as a nano influencer who is going to help more in conversion and stickiness. So the way in which you can use the same influencers will be different for a bigger brand and different for a smaller brand. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And I think there is a story over here, right? The kind of what you use the influencer for, or what kind of story comes out with one particular influencer that can help you with all the different stages of your funnel. But here brings me into a question that nano influencers still take a lot of time to convert. The spread of word will still be on a very shorter scale. Now, in this competitive environment where for one kind of brand or one kind of product, 10 competitors start in a span of maybe 6 months or 1 year, because it suddenly becomes a trend. So acquisition becomes all the more a very challenging game if you're going with a nano influencer route. At the same time, if you're a VC backed company or if you're a seeded startup, then it becomes very easy for you to go big budget on a mega influencer. And if your competitor is going for the mega influencer route, then you seeding in the nano influencers without any kind of budget or without the funding becomes very difficult for you to survive in this market. Then what do you do as a small brand?
I think as a smaller brand, then what your immediate choice is to understand that, okay, you might be playing a game of cricket, but you're playing at a gully cricket level and somebody else is playing at a national or an international level. So first understand the playing field. And once you understand the playing field, then you will have more realistic ambitions. Now, if you're funded or if you're on a high growth path, but if you still have a limited budget, then that is where you might want to use two things. One is identifying your early adopters and innovators and getting them to speak for you, okay, rather than actually going the typical influencer route. And the second would be to actually develop a community, have a community manager who's in-house, develop a community and get that community to also start speaking or spreading the gospel. Now, whether it's in-house influencers or having a community or actually looking at various other options like different platforms, these are all at your disposal. But what you need is a reality check as to what your budget is, what your metric is, and where you actually stand in the game.
And there are several routes like affiliate marketing. There are routes like, even as a skincare brand, what if you tap into a gamer,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
A live streaming of a gamer.
Yeah.
Uh, so,
I
I
don't
mean,
get
there are
enough sun. I
several,
don't get enough sun. So therefore, I
yeah,
use care when I'm getting. Yeah. Oh,
I need to look good for you too.
yeah. God, yeah.
Right, so I mean, there are several ways to go. It's all about getting creative. It's, I think, at the end of the day, what you and I both were trying to say, it's not about influencers as somebody who will make your product grow or make your company grow. It's using the influencers at the right time in your marketing journey for them to make the maximum impact. Then comes the question, what kind of influencers I use, what I make them say, which platforms I use them for, etc. But first, your marketing objectives should be in place, and then your marketing strategy should be in place. Only then will the influencers be able to make any kind of impact for you.
I think the biggest insight for me, Janavi, from with this conversation is that you can't outsource your marketing. So what you're doing is that you're outsourcing your marketing for through your influencers, thinking that the influencer will magically do things for you.
Yeah.
I think what tends to happen with smaller companies who don't have a marketing muscle inside their ecosystem, because they're maybe tech led or maybe they're manufacturing led, always feel that marketing is this wonderful magic which they don't have. Actually, marketing can be owned in house. Marketing can actually be leveraged very well if you don't get scared of it. And you cannot outsource your marketing either to an agency or to an influencer, whether it's a nano influencer or whatever. You need to figure out what your strategy and objectives are way before you start engaging with anybody outside. That is my biggest insight from this.
Yeah, I think that says it all. Just one small thing, you're very right on this. The biggest magic lies within the company, and influencers are somebody who can amplify your message, but they're not there to convert your message. They're not there to build your marketing or make your product grow, make your company grow. At the end of the day, influencers are a tool. They are not your strategy. They cannot be your strategy. And as a brand, if you're running in this race of trying to get influencers on board, maybe you're missing out on the resources that you all already yourself have in house,
Well
and
said.
that is something to tap into.